you smell what The Rock is cooking?
Acknowledge me.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
We are bad to the bone. Get it? Bad to the bone.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
I'll fight anybody. Who do you want? Just let me fight him.
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross.
Mega power, yeah.
We got it for you.
We are the best of the best.
Woo! Wheeling dealing.
Smart marks.
And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and of course we got to pontificate on the promo. I'm Adrian. You already know it's no BS coming from me. I'm joined by my two homies as always. We got Out of Lead. We got Greg. We're here, man. We got a quick episode, gentlemen. It's something that made me, it's just something that I really wanted to talk about because we love talking about these promos. We love talking about things of the past. Well, I want to talk about something currently right now. It's a lot of discussions amongst the IWC, and I know some of them can be bad. Some of them can be enlightening. Not too many, though. That's why we're trying to have this conversation. And I want to talk about two, in my opinion, I want to talk about two of the most popular / polarizing feuds of pro wrestling this year. We're in the fourth quarter, and we're almost headed toward the end of the year. And I have no doubt that these two feuds will head most lists as feud of the year. And that's CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre and Swerve Strickland versus Hangman Page. Now, before we unpack these promos, and because I love talking to you guys about this kind of stuff, I just want to put it out there, man. The kind of conversations that I'm seeing about these promos, which the promos I've selected, by the way, I've seen a lot of feedback and a lot of back and forth amongst these fans. But in my opinion, a lot of it is disingenuous. And a lot of it is, I'm pro WWE, so I'm going to crap all over this one. Or I'm pro AEW, and I'm going to crap all over this one. So, Adelaide, I'm going to start off with you, man. What's up with that?
You hit on it. It's tribalism at its best, right? It's what I mean. We've all done it. We've all hit a certain point in our life where, you know, we look at the other company or the other side, and we're like, "Well, they're not doing it as good as this guy, this company that I dedicate all my life to." And at some point, you just reach this point where, like, good is good. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, where, you know, it could be an indie company. It could be, you know, a streaming show that, you know, Mystery Wrestling up in Canada that Evil Uno's running has some really cool angles right now. This is just on a bigger stage, and I can appreciate it for what it is. And when I see it devolve into, this overinflated, you know, comparison, I guess, for lack of a better word, it doesn't hold water for me, because if you're truly a fan, you're seeing the goods, the positive in both feuds. I'm partial to the Swerve Hangman feud just because I've been following it more closely, and I've seen that through line early on where they were kind of, you know, early on showing some planting some seeds and showing some elements, and just knowing that Swerve is a real great wrestler and a planner, a storyteller. Hangman has proven he's a storyteller in other feuds, and to see that. Whereas the Punk feud, I think that one was more overcharged just because of the representations that Punk had coming in and coming back, right? And you already had a set of fans who were adamant, like, I don't like this guy, I don't like how he left. Or the other side was that I love this guy because of where he came from and what he stands for hating that other side. So I think it's silly. I like what I like, and I'm willing to give anything a chance. Do I have thoughts on how effective it's been or how both have, like, materialized? Sure. but that doesn't take away my enjoyment from it. I don't like getting into these silly, again, tribalistic feuds, so to speak.
That's fair. That's fair. Those are good points. Greg, man, my question to you: you've been a wrestling fan majority of all of your life, right? And I know when I was growing up here in Atlanta, we had friends that were just WCW.
Mm-hmm.
They could care less about WWF.
Mm-hmm.
But we also had friends here in Atlanta that were all in on WWF. They could care less about WCW. So you're familiar with that. In fact, you've seen different errors of this kind of someone against another group, that sort of weird deal. My question to you, I'm asking for your wisdom, by the way. how do you handle that? How do you handle tribalism?
So what's interesting, I'm going to go back deeper than WCW,
Okay.
because while you had the WCW WWE thing, right? You did have true. And if you ever listen to Bruce Pritchard, he talks about there were WWE fans who did not know WCW. That's
Right.
a fact.
That's a fact.
But if you go back, let's go back, but prior to WCW, you had the NWA. That's when you had more tribalism. You
Mm,
had the people who were more
Yeah.
Crockett, and they were like, "Yo, this is real wrestling."
yeah.
And they positioned themselves as, "We're real wrestlers. We're not cartoon." And you had that. If you think about AEW, WWE today, you had NWA, WWF. WWF was much more overproduced, cartoony, family, and you had this gritty. We knew week in and week out, you're going to get the better matches in NWA.
Mm.
I remember a special one time here in Atlanta, and it was mainstream TV, and they were contrasting the Blue Blazer against Great Muta.
What?
Because you think about your two high flyers. You got to think about
Right.
back then, they were talking about, well, WWF has this guy who's the Blue Blazer, and he does this, this, and this. And they're like, but look at this guy. And so it was like, this dude's better. This dude does more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This dude, and it was kind of interesting to see that. So you had tribalism then. And I think as it goes along, you had people who just didn't want that mainstream. And now you ask, how do you handle it? You, let me ask you. I'm gonna go back because I know you're a hip hop head.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, everybody's like Def Jam, Def Jam, Def Jam, and then it becomes big and like I don't like Def Jam no more.
Mm-hmm.
It was Cube, 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 Cube. Cube had America's Most. Cube had,
Mm-hmm.
Death Certificate. Cube was anti NWA, all that, and then all of a sudden he becomes big. Now I don't like Cube no more.
Mm-hmm.
That's WWE. WWE is that big time. WWE becomes that Metallica. WWE becomes that Cube. WWE
Mm-hmm.
becomes that rock band that I loved when they were here, but now they became too big. I don't like you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me go find my other independent rock band, and I go, and now I build them up. Now I'm like, oh, I love, I don't know whoever it be. I mean, at one point it was Nickelback, right? Everybody, oh, Nickelback, and then boom, they blow up. Now I hate Nickelback, right?
Right.
And then it was like Pearl Jam, and everybody loved Pearl Jam. Now they blow up. Oh, I don't like them anymore. So it's like that to me is what AEW has become. And you think about it for a second. There's people starting to rebel against AEW. And a lot of people think why they rebelling.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the storytelling. It's not all about that. It's about, wait a second. You told me you weren't going to bring in all these WWF guys. You told me you weren't going to be WWF light. And now you're trying to be that. Now you're trying to say, oh, we're big. Look how big we are. There's a lot of people who are not happy about those Wembley shows.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want 80,000 people. They want to keep their company here. They want to, this is my company. Just like people used to look at certain bands and certain artists, that's mine. I want them to play the small clubs. I don't want them to play State Farm. I don't want them to play Mercedes Benz. I don't want
Right.
them. What do you mean they're selling out of the stadium now? It happened with Bad Bunny in the States.
Yeah.
He's selling out arenas. I mean, not the arenas. He's selling out stadiums. Now all of a sudden people start rebelling against him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he got too big. Oh, that's WWE. Now AEW is going to grow. And now people,
Right.
I think the residual is going to be to an Impact, to an MLW, to somebody else.
Yeah.
Tribalism is not going to go away.
No.
But I think when you put it in that perspective, that we in America especially love the underdog until they're no longer the underdog.
For sure.
and then we want to break you down, and then we love the comeback story.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a perfect point, and it's just one of those things with tribalism. I know everyone likes to use that word, but it really is weird to me when we're in this time of pro wrestling where you have so many different options everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You damn near have a wrestling show every day of the week at this
Yep.
point. So if you don't like what WWE puts out, guess what? Wednesday you can watch Dynamite. On Friday you can watch Dynamite. You can watch Impact on
Collision. Yeah.
Friday. You have so many different options. And now with the internet, you can watch these independent shows. You can watch overseas. You have so many options. So it's just so super strange to me how extreme people go to when it comes to this tribalism. Like, why go online to say I hate WWE? Like, don't talk about them. Or I hate AEW. They suck. Don't talk about them, bro. Like, why are you? I hate telling someone to go touch grass because that's played out. But dude, experience the rest of the wrestling world. Like, don't dwell in this negative stuff. You can have critique. Hell, we have it on this podcast.
Yep.
That's why I like these conversations. We don't have to agree on all this stuff. In fact, I don't want that to be the case. But when you walk into a conversation, just looking to just bring up some negative stuff out of nowhere is kind of weird. It's kind of crazy, but that's wrestling fans at this point.
To your point, that's how we've evolved ourselves as wrestling fans, right? We've been around long enough to experience the doldrums of pro wrestling. I don't want to go back to the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. They were terrible, right? There were some gems in there. I love Bob Barker when he was on; it was fun. But by and large, they were terrible because there was nothing else. There was nothing else to motivate that show to be better, right? And now you're in an era where you can discount AEW, you can discount everybody, but you have TNA, you have Impact, TNA working in NXT and doing this crazy angle where do we know if they're actually signed? Do we know if they're just, being lent over, or is it, some kind of mishmash? And it's only NXT. It's not on the main show. So it's this cool, I always talk about the golden era, happening now, but we are experiencing it. It just happens to be that the loudest voices online are actually going to be the most upvoted or the most liked because controversy sells no matter where you are. But it's just funny to me to see what you're saying because I don't know what to say to these people anymore. And I don't mean this blanket statement of these people because it could just be one person who just has this very, extremist point of view where by and large, most people are just there to enjoy the show. These are just the groups that get attention, and it can be fun to engage with them, but I'm getting to a point where it's just exhausing, and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna enjoy what I like.
The time, man. I don't have the time, bro. I don't have the time, man.
So
exactly.
So I'm gonna give you one other parallel. So I'm a Star Wars fan, and
they're awful too.
So here's the thing: you got episode 4, 5, and 6, the original 4, 5, and 6. You have people who are very passionate about that. And those people still like 1, 2, and 3 because they're Lucas. But once Disney bought over, there's a whole group of people who hate Disney because that's the big boy.
Absolutely.
They ruined it. No, they made it better. They did more. They did more than what George could do with it. But that's neither here nor there. But you have a group of people who will rip every one of the most newest stuff.
For sure.
They will kill it. And it's not because of the content. They'll say it is, but if you start to ask them questions, they don't dislike it. They just don't like the fact that Disney's the one who's producing it.
Yeah.
And I think what you start to see now is you have a lot of people who are AEW hardcore, and they just don't like it because it's WWE.
Yeah.
And now they have a little bit less. They're trying because there used to be, I'm against Vince. Well, Vince is gone. But now you got a bunch of people who just don't like Tony Khan. And Tony Khan, I'll be honest, has turned me off.
Yeah.
Just and
I don't like it.
AEW
I
for
agree.
me is like that kid that you know has potential that you coach, and you sit back and go, dude, if you would just freaking use a little bit of your potential, do you know how good you could be? And it's like I pull for them. I don't want them to go out of business. I want them to have a TV deal because I don't want to see wrestlers out of business.
For sure.
It's bad for the industry if
Yeah.
something negative were to happen.
Right.
Horrible. It's horrible for TNA. It's horrible if anybody loses a TV deal. It's bad. But at the same time, it's like, dude, come on, get out of your own way. So it's like I
Objectively.
pull for
Yeah.
him, but then
Yeah.
there's a group of fans that made me like, oh, geez, I don't even want to deal with this AEW
Right.
stuff.
Right.
So,
Right.
excuse me, but it's just like that tribalism is not gonna go. It's not gonna go away. But it's I
Yeah.
think so many times we think about it in the pro wrestling thing, but it's in Star Wars, it's in Lord of
Sports.
the Rings, it's
Oh,
in
Kobe
Game of
LeBron.
Thrones. It's on everything, right? There's so many people who are so blindly loyal to certain things, and no matter what, they're just not gonna open their eyes to it. And I
That's
think
it.
that's how I deal with it. It's just I have to accept that there's people like that.
That's a fact.
and more often than not, they're the ones who spend the most money.
Speaking of spending money, you don't have to spend any money to watch this podcast or listen. Just all we ask is that you like, comment, subscribe, keep the conversation going. We love to interact with y'all, and we really do appreciate any of you that listen and support the podcast. We got a number of dedicated listeners, and we appreciate each and every one of y'all. Thank you again. All right, gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump into it. The first promo that we're going to get into is what I personally believe is feud of the year. It's a very unique one because one of the participants was hurt damn near all this year. But for some odd reason, they were able to keep this feud going. And that's CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. I think that putting those two together has really challenged Drew McIntyre. And honestly, it's upgraded Drew McIntyre. It's brought him to a level of performer on the mic that we didn't see before. So the reason why I wanted to bring this promo in particular is because of one little item, which is probably the most polarizing item in professional wrestling. And that's that, 25 cent little beaded, what is that?
Friendship bracelet.
Yeah, friendship bracelet owned by CM Punk. But Drew McIntyre constantly had his hands on it.
I prayed for this, and the big man made it happen. Me. Each and every one of you that have been chanting Punk's name for months now, I am done with you. When you chant his name, it's just in memory of now. You've spent months listening to me tell you what kind of person he is. You have watched what he's done to me at WrestleMania Clash at the Castle, screwing me over in front of my family, my friends, my country. I promised my wife, my sick wife, the world title, and he prevented that, and you still chant his damn name. As far as I'm concerned, you're chanting his name. You're dead to me. So now you all don't exist. I'm going to talk right to you, Punk, at home, because I know you're watching right now. I hope you're uncomfortable and in pain and been fed through a straw, because I did that to you. I put you there. I didn't just take your dignity, though, did I? I also took this. Now, this is worth about 50 cents. No real meaning. A fan made it for you, but I know to you, Punk, it is absolutely priceless. This bears the name of your wife and your stupid-looking dog, Larry. You wear this when you leave home so you can take them with you, so you don't feel alone. But you are alone, Punk, right now because of me, and in pain and miserable. And this is going to be a theme for you going forward, because I am going to enter the Money in the Bank ladder match. And you are going to watch alone and in pain and miserable. And I am going to win as you lay there alone and in pain and miserable because of me. I know what it feels like to be alone. I felt alone as everybody chanted your name, as the roster accepted you, as management accepted you, when I told them what kind of person you really were. But I'm not alone anymore, am I? I have your dog. I have your wife. I have your family in my corner now. And at Money in the Bank, I am going to win that contract. I am going to cash it in that night. And you're going to watch alone and in pain and miserable while I have your family by my side and become the world heavyweight champion in spite of your arse.
I will say, I will give WWE props, because when CM Punk first got back to WWE, they planted seeds for 2 feuds for Punk that could have went either way. And that was Seth Rollins and that was Drew McIntyre. Those were the 2 main players that had something to say about CM Punk being on that roster, being in that locker room. So I will give them credit for being able to put 2 little nuggets. We could go to Seth or we could go to Drew. But Greg, I want to get your opinion on this bracelet fiasco, because a lot of people have their thoughts on it. During matches, that's been a motivation of CM Punk grabbing at it, grabbing for it, not being focused on the match, but focusing on that bracelet. And it's taken out a lot of these fans, even though I think it's disingenuous because it's pro wrestling. I think it's disingenuous to say, oh, it's so stupid. But what are your thoughts?
So I think the part about him doing it in the match, it doesn't really match his character.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of something Cena would do.
Okay. That's
Now,
fair.
because CM Punk has always been that person that the rebel, right? The person who's kind of appreciates the fans but doesn't really care. Does that make sense? But I don't have an issue with the bracelet being a part of the feud because it's real. And
Yes.
you said this about this feud. This feud kept alive with one person being hurt because it's been real.
Mm.
Drew has not held back on podcasts and other places saying, I don't like Punk. Now, whether he does or not, I don't know, but he's been very consistent. He says he does not like him. What he said in the beginning of that promo was real. Everything he said was true. I'm here for you. I've been here. He hasn't been, and you still chant his name.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. The bracelet was really given to him by a fan.
Mm.
what he said in that promo, I now have your wife and your dog. And if you know anything about Punk, his dog is a big thing, just like Cody's dog is a big thing to him, on me. They're in my corner. So there's a lot of psychological stuff happening there that makes sense. I'm not a big fan of it being made part of the in-ring piece per se, but I'm curious to see where they go with it. But I don't have an issue with it. I think the interesting thing about it is because to me, when I watch this angle, I think about Cena, because that is a Cena angle. That is a Cena sticking up for his fans type of angle. It's not a Punk angle. However, it has endeared Punk to fans differently and made him more human. And that's one thing we never saw from Punk. And I think it makes him more likable, more relatable, and he's been open to this. Do you think in a million years that first run Punk is going to be like, you want me to do what with the bracelet? Even his run in AEW, you want me to do what with the bracelet? So I think that's showing growth on his part. I think Drew is doing the best work of his career.
Yes.
And those two together have been magic.
Definitely.
So I don't have an issue with it being part of it. I think it's been a little bit over the top, but I'm curious to see where it goes.
But I will say that the most recent chapter where Drew has pretty much destroyed the bracelet.
Right.
So I think that was effectively removing that negative talking point of, oh, the bracelet is goofy, it's distracting Punk, that's goofy. And I do agree that is very Cena like. You could see, you can absolutely see John Cena losing a match because he's grasping for this headband that this kid gave him. Like, that's absolutely a good point. Out of lead, man. Were you offended with the bracelet being a part of this feud?
If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, look us up on socials at Suplex Dinner Club. And be sure to check out our other projects. We talk college football on Dogs versus All Y'all. That's a weekly college football podcast where we don't just talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We talk about all things college football. The Life and Times pod, which is short for the Life and Times of a Restaurant Lifer podcast, where I have some chill conversations with some cool and interesting people that I've met in my years in the hospitality industry. And of course, check out Talk 'em in the Building. That's a pro wrestling podcast where we solely focus on the promo. We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate on the promo. It's a fun project, and if you're a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you're into TV and movie reviews, check out Four Corners Cinema with Ari and Adrian, a podcast where two lifelong pro wrestling fans review film and other forms of media that just so happen to have some of our favorite pro wrestlers. The Suplex Dinner Club family is growing, and I would love for you to be a part of it.
I never thought of him channeling Cena, because it doesn't fit his character, right? It doesn't fit who I think of as Punk. However, if we think of Punk as this guy who's like true to the fans, gives back to the fans, acknowledges the fans, is the voice of the voiceless, right? Once upon a time. His interactions with fans as of late, especially with even the return in AEW, right? Were always fan-centric. Down to 2011, down to Money in the Bank. You know, it's us versus them. So that bracelet, although it may seem like it may have overstayed its welcome, because it kind of did, it did represent his connection to the fans, his connection to this particular fan. There's this whole interaction online. The fan said, I think he gave it to Rhea, who then gave it to Punk because he missed Punk or something. I think that was the backstory. So it kind of made us the de facto person in representation of saying, this isn't just something I'm carrying for this young lady. This represents my connection to the fans in a very modern way, because that bracelet, that style of bracelet, has been synonymous with concert going. I mean, you go to a Taylor Swift concert, you're exchanging them with fans, and you're on the concourse, and they're giving you stickers, and they're giving you the fresh bracelets. K-pop groups, same thing. They'll give you a bracelet with your favorite member. So it's very much, even as much as folks had a hard time with it, it's definitely has a pulse on popular culture, on what we see now. Now, did it get a little goofy at some point? Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
it's Punk. You're like hardcore, man. You're like a badass. Like, what do you care about a bracelet? Now,
Right.
I stand by that whole idea of him caring about his dog and obviously clearly about his wife. And there's more in the promo, but I just think it's overblown, and it just becomes another talking point to hate on Punk, to hate on the feud, and losing sight of the fact that McIntyre is carrying this. McIntyre has carried this when Punk was out hurt, and still made this feud, and this feud has gone on forever, and we're still interested in it.
That's a fact. And honestly, I think, I mean, if we were to vote for MVP at this point of the year, for me, it would be Drew McIntyre.
Mm-hmm.
Just carrying that kind of feud all year. In my opinion, I think that ends WrestleMania. So it'll be a full year. I think they'll somehow add Seth to that to make it that much bigger of a deal. But Drew this has been his best work.
Dude,
Just hands down.
But not just what he's doing on TV, what he's doing on Twitter, social media. The
Yep.
picture he posted with Jack Perry, come on. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm like, my first thought when I saw it, I was like, is this Photoshopped?
Right.
And it wasn't. I was like, holy crap. And then he's smart enough, because I heard him talk about this on a podcast. He goes, yeah, I had to take it down. I took it down.
Mm.
He said it had, I forget how many millions of hits. And he was asked, were you told to take it down? He said, that's for me to know, not y'all. And he said, and I'm like, I guarantee, I'd be willing to bet Triple H didn't say a word.
No.
And smart. I bet Drew said, I'm taking this down, and I'm going to create controversy.
Yeah.
He has figured this out. And him and Punk, I mean, Punk's good as well, but they've had, I will say there's certain nights where they've, quote unquote, won the promo battle, because you see they're not on a script. You can see that 100%.
Right, for sure.
And you can see there's times that Punk has come out on top, and there's been times that Drew has rattled Punk, and that doesn't happen. And I'm like, I think that's the other part, is that when they get in there and they battle against each other, it comes off real.
That's a fact.
And I think this, just to your point, Drew has been the MVP of the industry, not just WWE or this feud, the industry, because he has kept this thing alive and taken it to another level, and it doesn't feel like it's, we're tired of it yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like they could go away from it and come right back to it.
Definitely.
If they need to.
And that's what I'm kind of hoping. That's what I'm hoping, that they give it a little time to breathe and then crank it right back up. Royal Rumble, one of those deals where, okay, no, we still have an issue. WrestleMania is where it's settled. So that will be a full year from Punk being right there at the announcer's table after Drew won this championship in front of his wife, in front of his family, just to get Money in Bank cashed in on me because of CM Punk. And it goes a full year. That's MVP work, hands down. Yeah. So speaking of MVP caliber performances, Swerve Strickland in AEW. We've talked about it past episodes of the People's Champion, how this guy got over with the fans. The fans pushed him. The fans were forceful about, hey, we want him as champ. This is our guy. This Swerve's house. Everyone's doing the na-na dance. All of that stuff has gotten over. And then AEW pulled the trigger and made him champ. But prior to him being that champ, he had a feud with Hangman Adam Page. One that was very polarizing, in the sense that in one of their matches, it got to the point of beyond gory, where we were tasting blood and all this craziness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was very polarizing. And that's when the tribalists came out. Oh, for the AEW sickos. Oh, it's cool. It's the coolest thing ever. They hate each other. Where the tribalists, the E-drones, they were like, oh, that's disgusting. Why would you ever do that? That's classless. All of this disingenuous conversation about that one moment. But we're not going to talk about that moment, gentlemen. We're going to talk about something a little bit more recent. And that's to do with this segment from Dynamite.
Yes. Hangman perhaps trying to frustrate Swerve Strickland. Only Adam Page knows can explain himself.
Whose house? Did you think I'd give you the satisfaction of a formality, of meeting and putting my signature on a contract for something that we both already know is going to happen? You know, you are a hard man to find. I looked all over Florida. I looked over Washington State. You've got a fiance that left you kids who aren't in the picture anymore. I mean, you wouldn't be a fool to think you've got nothing in this life other than the ring that you stand in tonight. But you messed up. You slipped up. You showed the world, and more importantly, you showed me something important to you. Your childhood home. Oh, it's low ceilings. I can see it now. Your mom running across these dirty ass floors, fixing your supper. Your dad sitting in his chair, telling you to shut the hell up so he can hear the television. And knowing the kind of man that you turned out to be, I bet your father didn't love you very much, did he? I bet he regrets having you at all. And what a wonderful world it would have been had you never been born. But that's enough down memory lane. I mean, you kind of covered it already. It is, as they say, your house. And I wouldn't blame someone for wondering why I'm here tonight and not in the ring with you, but you already know. You told me last week, much like when you sat in a car outside my front door and you watched me carry my pregnant wife to the hospital, you told me that now I must make a decision, a choice between hate and success, a choice between vengeance and peace. But for me, it's not much of a choice at all, is it? For me, they are one in the same. I told you for months and months and months that there was nothing that I wanted more out of this life than to burn your world to the ground. You know, if I couldn't be the one to take the world championship from you, I was happy to help it slip through your fingers. And this Saturday, locked inside of a steel cage, I'm going to take what is left of you. I'm going to take your pride. I'm going to take your dignity. Because you will be on your knees begging for my mercy, pleading for my forgiveness, but I will not give it to you. But the night is long, and it's about time to say goodbyes. But not goodbyes from me, goodbyes from you.
So if you haven't already said it, say goodbye to the AEW World Championship and any idea you might have of ever holding it again. This Saturday, you will say goodbye to your health, your career, your joy, and your happiness. And tonight, well, tonight you get a little practice. Because tonight, live in front of the world, you get to say goodbye to Swerve's house.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. Oh my. Hangman Page is completely deranged. Swerve's chocolate homie. This kind of revenge that Hangman wanted, but this.
I don't know about you guys, but gasoline prices are very high. So you have to really hate a person to do such a thing. Adelaide, I want your reaction.
That's
that
more
segment.
expensive than the 50-cent bracelet. That's at least a $4.50.
Exactly.
Can, man.
Exactly.
Lord. Man, we were talking about effectiveness, right? And again, we're talking about two feuds. We just talked about a feud that was centered around this representation of family, of what someone holds closest and dearest. That's in some ways beyond the championship, right? We think of the wrestling world. The championship is always the end all be all. But here they cross this line, this barrier, almost not trying to insult the audience, but still having the audience buy in. And one small note is earlier that day of this promo, AEW put up a post that seemed very much out of character in a way. A little suspect because Nana's there. And they do this whole backstory about how important this house is. Now Swerve has made enough money to buy his childhood home back.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's crucial to have that context because it really sells the reactions that Swerve is giving in the ring, where it's not just this piece for TV. It's truly rooted in something real, right? He gives this backstory about growing up in the house and having, family members and losing the house and getting it. And it's a beautiful story that gives you the value of what this house represents. No different than the bracelet, right?
Mm-hmm.
On a different level, but really no different. It hits on the same touchstones and heartstrings. For me, it's, we talk about cinematic and what piece, but I could take this in isolation, cut off all the pieces about pro wrestling, and it plays like a movie. It plays truly like the scene in a movie, in a very good movie, because it's well acted, it's well written, it's well paced, right? I'm trying to figure out, is he on a steady cam? Is he on a gimbal? No, it's just like a stick. It's probably on a phone or a really good kind of Canon Rebel or something. But you never lose sight of Hangman. You never lose sight of where he's at, and he never loses his train of thought, right? Down to that last piece that ties it all together. And for me, again, draws these parallels. Here's two guys that have been in and out of other feuds. Hangman going on a complete heel turn that a lot of people didn't like, to be quite honest, initially. And you can come back to this feud as many times as you want. And it's going to be, they just have to keep heightening the stakes. I don't know how much you go after this other than killing each other or something like that.
Right.
Which they've tried in the ring, clearly. I love it. I think that's, and I'm happy to know now that it's a gimmick because they've done another one just like that and it did come out, but it fooled wrestlers, right? All these pieces. I don't know about the needle. I'm not about that business at the last pay-per-view, but they're trying something different, and I can't blame them for it. It's not everybody's cup of tea. And it wasn't even when there was that whole bloody episode of the Texas Death Match at the Full Gear pay-per-view in 2023. But again, we were talking about differences and what's allowed within the company. This is we have a new limit now, right? And we've had several, but I think this is over the top now. I think I love it because it's cinematic, and I love anything that's well done, regardless of who does it. And this was well done to me.
Definitely. It's very unique how the tables have turned from their last feud, like you said, where Swerve and Nana broke into Hangman's house.
Right.
You know, so it's just that this is how we switch. Now it is kind of weird, I will say, where Swerve literally went from All In, basically being the champion heel, to Danielson, to now being the baby face. Like, it was really quick.
Yeah.
Like within a week, which is it's kind of weird, but that's, I'll give them props on that segment, the tweet leading into it, so that, because I remember that photo circulating, because people thought it was cool. Like any of us who have the opportunity to purchase your childhood home, man, that's amazing. That's one of those things where, hey, this is mine. I grew up here. This is part of my family. This is part of my legacy.
Yeah.
And I remember that floating around, it just for that evening, just to see it burn down to the ground. Like, that's drama, man. That's good stuff. So, Greg, I'm pretty sure that was your first time seeing that segment.
No, I've seen the segment. I just have I haven't seen the whole feud. But I think what's interesting about this is I saw the same thing earlier in the day, and I'd read the story about. I had to say AEW played that well. Like, to me, probably the best thing they've done is that they played that. They released it in a way where it worked fans, and I mean, everybody was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" You know, coming off his loss, but look what he's done. Da 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 da. This really put him over to say, "Hey, look what he did for for his family, right?" And I read it. I was like, "Cool, right?" I didn't think nothing else about it. I thought, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Then I see this, and I'm like, "Dude, they worked the world," and I was like, "That's so perfect," and I just left it there.
Yeah.
Did I see similarities? And I can go down it. Did I see similarities to other angles in the past? Of course.
Absolutely.
But it's just like any other movie, TV show. There's all kinds of stuff that's happened in the past.
Yeah.
But what's funny about this, and I loved Hangman Page. Well, first off, I think Hangman Page needs to take over the company, to be quite honest. He needs to be that star. He needs to be that person.
Yep.
They need to build it around him and Swerve. Those are the two. I hate to say homegrown, but those are the two who you need to build around, and not build around a Danielson, not build around anybody else who's touched WWE. Build around your own people. Let a Danielson, an Edge, and people like that make them. But Heyman's promo was excellent. Because what does a villain do? All villains, whether it's in DC, Marvel, wherever, they believe what they're telling you.
Right.
And there's truth in what they say. You even look at Thanos. There's truth in what he says. There's truth in what Hangman said. And at the end of the day, you touched on it. Swerve started this. Swerve went to his house. Swerve talked about his pregnant. Swerve did this, the other stuff. He said, "Oh, you want to do this to me and bring in the personal? Okay, let's make it personal. Let's take it to a different level." And his promo brought you in to where, obviously, we only had a week turnaround, right? Between those two shows.
Right.
But we talked about Drew and CM Punk. We could pause it and come back to it. And that's what they did here. But what Paige's promo did was recap all of it.
Yeah.
And he just told a story that said, "This is what we've been through, and I'm not done with you. And by the way, this is what we went through. I cost you the title, and now here we're back. I never lost sight of you." That's what I get out of that promo. You lost sight of me. I didn't lose sight of you.
That's a great point.
And I still had revenge on my mind. And that's a true villain. A true villain is the one who sits back and is like, "Okay, Batman, you got me this time, but I'm still coming back."
Definitely. Yep. Definitely.
And that was Paige. And I think this was excellent. I think the burning of the house worked so many fans that the ones who revolted against it are the ones who got worked.
That's
You
a good
go
point.
in, if
That's
you
a good
go into
point.
one of those Facebook posts and you go to the early comments, every single fan in there was worked. Every
Yeah.
single freaking one of them.
Mhm.
And I don't care who it was. Now they're pissed. Like, oh, I knew it. Oh, F them. Oh, this is just like what WWE did. Oh, now they're all revolting against it. Why? Because you got worked.
Right.
And you got worked by your own company that you're so passionate about, that you think Meltzer has told you everything that's happening and Alvarez has told you everything. Guess what? They don't know shit. Because at the end of the day, they got worked too.
That's a fact.
Because it was reported from Wrestling Observer too that he bought the house.
Ooh. Yikes.
So they all got worked. And so now all these people who are going to revolt against it is because they got worked. This to me is the best thing AEW's done since they started.
High praise.
That's
Wow.
bold. Yeah, that's bold. Nah, that's like I said, I'm touch and go with AEW. Like we've I'm not even gonna waste time talking about the reasons why, but that's just reality. When I see good stuff from them, I'm gonna be one of the first people to say, "Hey, that was really damn good," and I'm gonna give that props, and I'm gonna be absolutely unbiased. That segment was probably one of my favorite segments of the year. So emotional, storytelling. It hit on all the marks, and it perfectly set up for that main event match between those two dudes. And like y'all said, they can always revisit this. This could be a Peter Griffin fighting the chicken whenever, whatever. You know, we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight to the death.
Yeah.
And they can run this back next year. They can run another program next year where the roles are reversed again. That's good stuff. That's professional wrestling. Those are the kind of segments. Those are the kind of promos that make us all fans of pro wrestling.
Yep. This is Dusty and Ole. This is Dusty and Flair. We can come back to it anytime to say whatever you want to say about the match.
Right.
Whatever. It served a purpose. I hope they leave it alone. Like, I hope that match ended it and allow them just to go, you know what? Somebody come out and say, you know what? We're going to keep them separate. However we got, because you can't end it. At some point, they can keep, like you said, intertwining here and there. But at some point, it's going to happen. They're going to come together. It's going to be Sammy and Kevin. It's going to be somebody like that. It's going to be Cena and Orton. It's going to be somehow rated RKO. It's going to be that type of thing that we hate each other so much, but somehow, some way, they're going to come together. It will happen.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the biggest freaking baby faces in the world.
Common threat, right? But we probably haven't even seen or been introduced to yet.
Correct.
Well, like I said, man, those were two of the top feuds of the year. I appreciate you, gentlemen, for at least talking about those two segments in particular. Your thoughts on bracelets and burnt down houses. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Talk'em in the building. Please like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, share with a wrestling fan, whether they're into wrestling now, wrestling fans of the past. Share the podcast with them because there's some good conversations going on. We like to have fun with y'all. We love feedback, so please feel free. Put it down in the comments. In fact, what's your feud of the year? Did we get this right? Let us know. I'm Adrian. That's Out of Lead. That's Greg. We're signing off. Once again, this Talk 'em in the building where we talk about the talkers. We hype the hype man. And of course, we got to pontificate on the promo. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.